below, so I'll be moving back eventually.
Okay.
But yeah, now we get my baby's crib and the live stream video, so memorialized forever.
Oh, you have a new baby.
A year old, so yeah.
Oh, okay. Newish.
Yeah. All right, so I think now we're recording. Hello, this is the Node.js Loaders team meeting for 2021-07-09, July 9th. I am Jeffrey. We have Jacob and Michael.
Hello.
I think our agenda is pretty much the same every week. It's like what's going on with Jacob's PR as he's working on, well, basically like the first 3 steps of our roadmap, consolidating the loader methods and associated other improvements that cover a lot of ground. So take it from there.
So I have good news and I have bad news.
Okay.
Let's start with the bad news. So with the loaders repository that you guys had from before, the bad news is that the Coffeescript loader that was previously taking advantage of the difference between get format and get source, that no longer works, I think, because because the URL that is supplied to both, and previously it was relying on them being different, and it was kind of faking a file that was not real, and it was then using that to very cleverly trick Node.js into evaluating the Coffeescript file as a JavaScript file. But the problem is that step 1 still works, but step 2 does not, because it subsequently passes that same non-existent file path to get source, and then get source kind of blows up because the file is not real.
Yes. So, all right, let's back up for a second. I think what was like if in the exists and I might be completely wrong, so stop me if I'm talking about something that's not the issue
Okay.
you're describing. So I wrote that code, but it was like 2 years ago. So, yeah, forgive me if I screw any part of it up. So I think what was happening was I had the case of like it was like import foo from /file.coffee was like say the import statement. And so for the resolve part, like if there was no loader at all, even if say file.coffee was like a 0-byte file, okay, so it actually
Mhm.
would have been, executable JavaScript despite the file extension. First off, Node would have thrown an error because it doesn't recognize the file extension. But like say we disabled that, like say you had a loader that all it did was, allow any file extension and then it doesn't do anything else. Or say we actually took that error check out of Node core, which is something we have discussed doing. Like I think we've discussed maybe when a custom loader is registered, Node just doesn't check for file extensions because like the assumption is that there's a good chance that one of your loaders might be doing something with the new file extension or a network URL. So like Node should just assume that like, if you've got a loader involved, it's probably doing something with what otherwise Node would have thrown an error about. So let's assume for a second that we don't have to worry about that part of it of Node throwing an error on unrecognized file type.
That's not the
So
problem.
then, I'm sorry.
I said that's not the problem.
I thought it wasn't. So yeah, so let's just leave that aside for a second. I think what it was doing with calling default node resolve on existing specifier .js as if it was like .file.coffee.js was asking Node, like, using the default require, module resolution algorithm, what would this specifier have resolved to if it were a JavaScript file? And Node returns something. And then that's like what we run with. And I think,
The
yeah, your
result
changes
part is
must,
totally fine.
oh, okay. So then I'm not thinking of the right part. So what is
Yes.
so it's the problem in the load hook?
Yes. So the
Okay.
problem is in that we've combined get format and get source. And previously, what the hook was, the loader was very cleverly doing in get source, sorry, in get format, it was specifying the sorry, it was specifying the specifier uh, as as it normally is, and then arbitrarily appending .js, and that caused Node's default get format to treat it as a JavaScript file, and that then very much down the like in the internals and the guts caused it to then search for a package.json and then was evaluating
Oh,
its
to do
type.
the type module
Yes, so
aspect of
that
it.
still succeeds. But since get format and get source are now combined, it is the same URL passed to both. So the first part succeeds and it correctly identifies CommonJS or ESM. But if you are using package.json to specify this, in an ESM. So if you're using package.json to specify a different type than a parent or ancestor package.json specifies. So let's say in this particular example, the project itself specifies ESM, and then some descendant specifies common.js. That descendant is appropriately identified as CommonJS. But then when it goes to read the actual file as part of get source, it blows up and it says this file doesn't exist because it doesn't.
So, okay. Like there's certainly you could just implement your own logic for like, yeah, find this file on disk, find its nearest parent package.json. Does it have type module?
It could. That would be, I think, probably much more difficult to reinvent. If
I mean, it's much less
CoffeeScript is,
elegant, certainly, but like that's all I'm doing essentially is like kind of cheating and using Node's hook to avoid having to write all that logic myself.
yes.
There's an open, it's either an issue or a PR. I think it might be a PR. I'll find it in a second. So there's a thread with a lot of comments about when we added package exports, like the exports field makes everything encapsulated by default. So like if you wanted to, if you wanted to do require foo/package.json, you couldn't do that unless package.json was included explicitly in the exports map. And there are build tools that do that, like, oh, for every dependency in the package.json, go do require dependency name /package.json to like get every dependency's package.json file. And so the authors of those build tools contacted us and were like, hey, can you just create this some exception in your exports algorithm that package.json is always exported? And we thought about it and we were like, no. like that would be like, yes, we understand that this like breaks this behavior that you were relying on, but people should be able to keep that private if they want to. Like all you have to do instead is like, do an FS read file. Like you could still get it through traditional file system calls rather than using require. Anyway, it was a lot of back and forth on that thread. So the short version was the modules team was like, why don't you see what you can do without us making an exception before we make an exception? How bad would it be? And then we'll think about it. It was kind of like the response. And then they basically found a solution and then like it died away. But there's like a thread with like 100 comments. However, the one thing that did spin out of that thread was that people do find it really useful to have a node utility method called I think it's like get package metadata or something like that, where given a URL or a file path, but at least a URL, get the controlling package.json file for that path. So in other words, just, is there a package.json in the same folder as that file? If so, that's it. Else, keep going up until you reach the root of the file system, and if and return the first package.json that you find, or if there aren't any, then you return undefined.
This thing exists?
I'm sorry?
This exists?
No, I think there's a
Oh.
PR to add it, because there was consensus that, yeah, this would be a pretty damn useful utility method to have. It's pretty small. It's very clearly scoped. Like, yeah, we should just add this to core, because it's something that Node is doing anyway. So like, let's just expose the logic for finding the package.json file to third-party code to be able to run. So there's a PR for this, I'm pretty sure, and we could find it. But it sounds like that would be the elegant way to rewrite this, where instead of me, like, I was essentially using default get format as a way of first finding the controlling package.json file and then asking, does it have type module or not?
Yeah.
Whereas if this utility method existed, it would be like, package metadata equals get package metadata URL, and then, is module is package metadata dot format or something like that. So it becomes a two-liner. I mean, I guess you could collapse that into a one-liner, but like, it's much more explicit and less of a hack than what's in the example now. So that's probably the way we should do it. And then we have the freedom to, rearrange these hooks and what's happening in each hook without breaking these like hacks that people might have written,
Okay, awesome. Because
I mean, unless
was
you
not
have a better
aware.
idea, but that's the
No,
first thing that comes to my head.
no, exactly. That's what I was about to bring up, was like that I don't think it's specifically Node's, it's not really in Node's purview to like fix what this thing was trying to do. But then alternatively, it would be very unpleasant for someone if this PR that you just mentioned, if that did not exist. But thank God if it does, then I think
Well, and
that's
I don't think it
really
ever
valuable.
landed. I think it never got finished or something. Like, they didn't write the tests or something like that. But I can look it up and find it and send it to you. I can even do it now, I guess.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I was gonna say,
but
like,
we should
not really
absolutely get it
our problem.
wrapped, because I don't. There were no objections to, like, no one was like, oh, this shouldn't be in core or something like that.
Mhm. Okay, yeah, good. Because I was like, this is not really our problem, but also at the same time, like, this would really suck.
It's like, there's just so many damn PRs that it's like, how the hell am I gonna find this? This might take me a while.
Okay, sure. Yeah, I came across the internal bits that this was doing, and I was like, oh man, I really wish I had access to this. But yeah, if there's had access to this as not a Node person.
Okay, so here's the at least the thread where people are complaining about the exports part of it. And if there's a PR, I'm sure it would be linked to from this. Linked to from here. Yeah, someone created a third-party module to solve this, and it looks like that's what a lot of build tools have shifted to using, which I think was probably the idea that most people wanted them to do. Maybe there isn't a.
I'm looking at Jordan's comment from the 21st of April saying we need to bulletproof this. That sounds like the thing
Bulletproof
that's,
what?
I don't know, this. Actually use the resolution algorithm. That seems like that's the blocker. But I don't know what needs to be bulletproof.
Well, I think that's why it needs to be part of Node Core. Well, there were two reasons that this was a good candidate for being in Core as opposed to a third-party module. One was it really needs to use whatever the exact same module resolution algorithm import uses. And
Oh, God.
and then the only way to ensure that is, if there's some way to call it, like I don't think there's an equivalent in ESM for required resolve, if I remember right. So so that's like part one. And then I think part two was Node already has a cache of every package.json file that is used in a module tree. Like,
Mhm.
say from a particular entry point, it loads whatever 10,000 files across your app and then your Node modules all the way down.
Mhm.
All of those 10,000 files, there's, well, I don't know, 250 package.json files between your apps one and then all of your Node modules each have a package.json file or many, potentially several. All of those package.json files are kept cached in memory in the module cache. So having a like get package metadata function that takes as an argument a particular file path, Node very likely already has that package.json file already cached in memory because you're probably asking it to look up the package metadata of a file that's in your project. You're not asking it for some random file halfway across your hard disk. So if it does have it in memory, it just returns it. Kind of by definition, no third-party package could do that and be as performant as if it were part of Node Core and had access to that cache. So that was I think why it was agreed, like, yeah, this should be part of Core because it's something that Core is already doing and it can't be done as well as a third-party module. I think where we left off was we were just waiting for someone to write it. I thought someone had started it.
Isn't this? Oh no, this is an issue, not a pull request.
Yeah, I'm just like reading it. Oh, package.dir. Someone. Okay, no, that was just another potential name for it.
Should we expose this on like import meta?
Resolve package root. That's what I suggested it be named because it's a URL, not a file path. So I was like, well, dir doesn't make much sense because you're resolving to a URL. So here's another issue where it was discussed. So let me look up the open PRRs for resolve package root. Because that, I mean, unless they called it resolve package dir, but anyway, that should be able to, we should be able to find it that way.
Oh, the utility name.
Yeah, I guess this doesn't specifically return the package.json file. It just returns the path to like the folder that contains the package.json, and then it's on you to
like figure it out.
Yeah.
Sorry, I just saw Bradley's comment. Check. I think he is among us.
Oh, hi. Sorry. Thank you for alerting me. Hold on. Whoops, clicked the wrong button.
No, he's here.
There. Yeah, just gave him permission to talk and forgot and not promote, but then I just promoted him. Hi, Bradley.
Oh,
Yep. All right.
Hey, so we were talking about,
I was listening for a while. I know.
oh, okay. Yeah, I'm sorry. You need to, it's hard for me to, yeah, just say something on the Slack. I've been trying to keep that open in the ESM channel. But all right, yeah, you did say something on Slack. All right, I suck at this. I'm sorry.
it was 1 minute ago.
I'll do
We're
better
talking. It's fine. It's fine.
Anyway.
The only contention we had really about this package there is there's some confusion with redirects around it. There always is, honestly. And so
I mean,
just
like
be sure
like symlinks, you mean, or something else?
I forget the exact details of it, but you can get into a situation where you don't, where what you get from the function does not match what is actually loaded. Yeah,
Well, how does it
bad.
actually work then?
I can't seem to find an open PR for it. So like, are you
This is
describing a
why
theoretical?
there isn't an open PR, because there's disagreement on what happens. So what's a good example? I think one was if you use something like you import foo and it redirects you to a subdirectory which contains a package JSON. Do you get the subdirectory's package JSON directory, or do you get foo's package JSON? And there's no correct answer. So there's a lot of argument.
Well, maybe we could, well, this was like get package, resolve package root, which was like the folder that contains the whole package, which is arguably a bigger scope than like say get package metadata, because get package metadata, like that has one answer. Like what was the package.json that Node used for this, for file.js, which package.json did Node use to determine type module or not? Like
So-
that at least should
so
be clear,
that-
right?
The one used to determine the location can be different from the one used to determine the type, is the problem.
Well, why don't
Is
we
it because they
just
have to get
reduce the
collapsed?
scope and do one that just, I mean, I don't know if we want to reduce it all the way to like a function that literally like returns type module or not, but like a function that just returns package.json and stop there. And then if there's a, we can have a separate function that's like return package root.
No, I'm
Does
just
Node
saying,
internally create some kind of like merged package JSON where it has like all of the metadata and like, I don't know, let's say there's like 10 package JSONs involved and it has like a merged hash of
I don't think
all of the different
there's always only one that controls, like for type module, for for the exports field, for the imports field, it's always like,
the closest.
it like for a particular path, it finds the controlling package.json, and then that's the only one it listens to. It doesn't merge that with other ones farther up in the tree or something like that.
Well, no, I'm thinking for like the total of things. And if that's
not
what this is
collapse.
trying to do.
we don't flatten, if that's what you're asking. So if you have, for example, a subdirectory that has a different type, say it's type common.js, but the parent has exports, and that's how you actually get to that subdirectory. The subdirectory does not contain data from the parent. And the parent would never contain data from the children because there are multiple children potentially.
Right. So if you have
yeah,
like,
for
if
sure,
you had like a folder foo, and inside that a folder dist, and inside that file.js. Also under dist, you had package.json that said type .js. If you did get package metadata for foo/dist/file.js, it would return only that smaller package.json that only said type .js, and not the parent package.json that had 30 other fields in it.
I think should, yes, because you may have compiled dist to be a specific thing, and then your source code could be a different one.
Well, but also like that's the package.json that Node is applying to that file. So that's the one that you should be, that Node should be returning. Is this all correct, Bradley?
Should is not a good word because two there are two package JSONs in play, and people are consistently trying to conflate them as a single entity. There's the resolved,
No, definitely not.
the resolved form, the one used to resolve. We do not have a reentrant resolve system, so there's only one of those ever. And the type package JSON, there's only one of those ever. But people are trying to use this single API to do workflows with both, and that just doesn't work. So,
All right, so maybe to unblock you, Jacob, maybe the easiest solution is to just write like some recursive function that does like, you know, fs dot read file, you know, current path slash package.json, and then, you know, recurses. If it finds one, it returns it. Otherwise, it does ... slash and the thing, and keep recursing up until it either finds one or hits the root. And so, I mean, I don't know, this will at least add whatever 10 lines of code to the Coffeescript example, but at least like you could move on and not be stumped by this, and you also won't be blocked by having to implement some other PR for resolve package root or get package metadata or whatever it ends up being, since apparently I guess it's not as easy as straightforward as I thought it was. What do you think?
The only problem is there are multiple. People constantly argue about what the one true one is rather than letting there be multiple.
Right, but I'm just saying, like, for the purposes of an example in the docs, he could just write the simple logic that I just described of like find the nearest parent package.json using FS methods that we already have in Node, and like that's enough for his purposes.
So we're saying like what you could have sort of hacked together before, like this is how this would work now, and then like official solution.
Yeah, I mean, I thought that the like much more elegant way of doing this was like on the brink of landing, like it was just a PR that needed more review or something, but I misremembered apparently. So I don't want to block your PR on something that a PR that hasn't even been written yet, and it hasn't been written yet because people can't quite agree on the specifics of it, even if they do agree on the need for something in this general area. So
yeah, that sounds good to me.
Okay.
And actually, on that related note, if we want to use this as a sort of like proving ground for loaders, should we move this repository into, or this code into the Node Loaders repository?
That's a great question. Michael, what do you think?
You mean like in the loaders one where like the issues and all that stuff is?
Yeah, like we could put this.
Oh, I was initially thinking it would just be like another repo under Node.js, but I guess we could just move the code itself into the, I don't know. We tend to not have like these repos, like the loaders repo and the models repo, tend to be just like markdown files, and that's all we put in there. We're not mixing code as well as that stuff.
It also is like, would there be multiple of the same things, or is like one repo that you clone make sense?
We could maybe make another, like a sibling repo where like this is Node.js /loaders. The other one's like Node.js /loaders examples. And it's just my repo that I have now just moved. What would you think about that?
I was imagining just an examples folder in Node.js /loaders, but I don't have a particular.
I feel like it's cleaner to keep it separate because we would have issues and pull requests related to the code as well as related to the markdown files, and it would probably be easier to keep those in separate repos, you know?
Sure.
Yeah, if it's kind of like a longer term resource that's going to stick around, that would make sense. We definitely have like Node add-on API examples as a repo within the Node one, so that makes sense to me.
Okay, so maybe I'll look at that one as an example, and then I feel like I needed help from some administrator to create the loaders repo in the first place, so I'll probably have to reach out to you, Michael, to migrate this one. But
I think it's like create an issue in the admin repo, just explaining like, hey, we'd like to create this new repo. Here's the name. Here's what it's for. You know, nobody objects. Within a couple of weeks, we say yes, and then I can go ahead and create it.
Yeah, the only thing I think is potentially problematic is like there's some of the folders on that some of the top level folders in that repo are for loaders that just don't work because like Derek or somebody like started it but never got it to work. But maybe I could do something like make a top level folder called like works in progress or something and just move them underneath that, and then it's clearer, like don't expect these to work. And I could add a README that's like for each load, you know, these are example loaders. For each loader, put a README explaining which node version it's expected to work against, because some of these are out of date with the current experimental API, blah, blah, blah. So I could like add some signposts so that people aren't confused, but.
Actually, I believe each example has its own package JSON, so we could put engines in there.
Sure. Yeah, I don't know if how respected that is. I feel like that was a deprecated field or something. I can't remember the details.
I like your suggestion of like these don't work. So putting them under a separate directory, because otherwise you will get people saying, hey, I tried it out and it didn't work.
Right. I mean, once it's under the Node.js banner, like github.com/Node.js, I feel like it's got to have a bunch of README files or extensive README that like if the general public finds this, you know, because like when it's just under my name, like who cares? But
yeah, very least should say like, you know, we've done them for like, it's a clone when we did Node API, and it was like, hey, this is a work in progress, you know, and it's a working repo. Same for things like Quick and stuff. So having enough documentation so people don't get confused and is definitely good.
Okay.
And
well, I can do that.
So if you have and I guess it's like when you open the admin repo and if you have an existing repo, it's more of not a request to create a new one, but to move this existing repo over, which is just a slightly different. Still need to add like the same boilerplate, like licenses and whatever.
Oh yeah. I mean, they could just create a new repo and then I could like check out the main branch of the other one and push that branch to the new one.
Whichever way you want to do it, like you know, we do move repos in, so that's possible if that makes sense. Or if you prefer to create a new one and move stuff over, that just ask for whichever you want, right?
Whatever I don't care. They're the same thing. So whatever's easier. It's fine.
All right. Yeah.
I have time, but just conscientious of someone potentially.
Well, I think there's going to be some other group that starts taking over this channel.
Okay.
There's some other meeting at 11 my time. So, Bradley, thank you for joining. You came in just in time.
Yes.
And Michael, thank you as well. This was a very productive meeting.
Nice listening in this time.
We want to try to cover before we get kicked out?
I'll say bye.
I think that's it. Yeah.
All right. So Jacob, I guess let me know if you get stuck on anything else. But I look forward to. Also, by the way, if you don't mind just pinging me on Slack whenever, because I have a lot of GitHub notifications, so I feel like might not see it quickly if it's only in there. But please feel free to ping every time there's any update at all for me to look at. Please ping me, and I'm happy to try to review as soon as you have stuff. But yeah, let me know if you're blocked on anything else, and I'm happy to try to work through it with you. So.
Cool. Thank you. I think this is it.
I mean, yeah. Once you get both of those examples running from that repo, the Coffeescript and HTTPS, then it's just okay. Final code review of the PR, and we merge it in. I think so. We're in the home stretch. So like we're just at the testing phase really of this. So you've covered all of the objections that anyone had to approach or documentation, design. All those things have been already addressed. So now it's just making sure that it works. It doesn't have any bugs that we can find. I think so.
Cool. The good news is if I change the file extension from merely coffee to coffee.js, everything's fine. File extension of the actual file.
Yeah, which
of course is
wouldn't quite be a realistic use. But I mean that does tell you though that then all you need to do is to solve this one problem of replace my hack with a more robust solution, and we're everything else seems to work. That's great news. So yeah. So
cool.
Yeah. If you need help writing some recursive SF function or whatever, I can help you with that. But I feel like if that's all we need to do, we're nearly there. We're in the home stretch. So
I fortunately just did something very similar for Getty Images. So fingers crossed, I
good.
can reuse the knowledge, not the code, because I don't want to get sued.
No, we're at a public YouTube channel here. So sounds good.
For the HTTPS stuff, Bradley, does your thing handle this, or like?
I wasn't, I guess, paying close enough attention.
Well, he's got like a PR against Node Core for adding support for HTTPS URLs to like Node Core, which absolutely is like fabulous, but that's like a huge lift.
It's not a huge PR, but you get the content type back, so you work off the mine.
Well, no,
right.
What I'm wondering is, like, do I actually need to even worry about this, or has Bradley
should
already
just transparently work as long as you check for the MIME type coming back. The format strings we have are very fragile. I tried to convince people to use MIMEs, but
yeah, the existing loader example looks at content type in the headers from the HTTPS response. So that part would all stay the same, I think, in your updated version of this loader. I think like once Bradley's PR lands, if it becomes unflagged by default, then yeah, we should change this example because now we're duplicating something that's in the Node Core. But
well, that's what I'm wondering.
Like that's a ways off.
Do we even need to worry about this? Because
yes, we do. We do, for the same reason you have to worry about it for data URLs. There was strong pushback for get format. So get format doesn't actually return a valid MIME type, so you have to do a mapping. And Core won't do that mapping for Coffeescript, so you will still have to do it.
Well, this is a separate loader. This is like an HTTPS loader.
Correct, yes.
Well, no, what I was wondering is if Bradley's PR just like natively supports HTTPS, do we need a loader for this, or will it just work? But it sounds like mostly, but
so the HTTPS loader that Node Core is going to ship is going to be locked down. It most likely won't do what people want it to do in all cases, so probably.
And again, it's just an example. Like there's going to be people, like this is an example realistically of loading from a cache, or loading from some arbitrary other source that's not like what Node's algorithm would resolve it to on disk. So it could still be loading from a file, but like imagine instead of it saying resolving HTTPS : whatever / whatever, it was yarn PMP : / whatever. And then it's like this very similar loader, but it's like now it's using different machinery to like look in yarn's plug and play cache to find the file to return it. Like the example is still pertinent, even if specifically HTTPS like becomes part of Core, Like we might change the example to not be confusing if HTTPS is, handled by Core already, and then we'd have to find like what would be the next most common example that would be a good thing to put in the docs. But I think we'll deal with that when Bradley's PR lands, because I'm assuming it's still a ways away, right, Bradley?
I mean, it's going to land flagged in a few weeks, probably.
Oh, well, I don't know. I would still flag. I don't want to. I don't want to.
Super unstable. Don't.
Yeah, like I wouldn't want to. I don't want to get blocked on waiting for that to get unflagged, and now this PR could be blocked for potentially months because who knows how. I mean, I feel like that PR has a good chance of taking a long time to get unflagged because of all of the implications of it. So,
okay, cool.
I'd rather land yours this month if we can, and not have it dependent or blocked on anything else if at all possible. So
okay, yes,
and then we could just change the example later when his thing lands. Like that's changing examples easy. So
yes, cool. Slightly outside the purview of this conversation, Bradley, you mentioned the MIME type mapping. You have to like handle that yourself. Is that like some kind of argument that you can pass and just like pass in like a custom map?
It originally was going to be, and then we could never get people to agree that loaders should use MIME types. And so we have this weird custom string map.
Okay.
So no, it's not passed
Alphabet
around.
standard.
I talked about it needing to be passed around, but people did not want MIME types to be exposed to any visible part of loaders for whatever reason. And so you have to do custom mappings and read it out of the data URL yourself and stuff like that.
Oof. Okay. Sorry for that extra headache, Bradley. Okay, cool.
No, we should go though, because people are waiting.
Well, no one showed up, so maybe there isn't some other meeting to come.
Oh, okay.
But but yeah, I need to get going though. But it's been a pleasure, and I'll talk to you guys soon. So.
Cool.